Hello, this is Sam Simon. Welcome back. I apologize for yesterday's misstart. This is the first year in 9 years that we have um, blogged and talked about breast cancer awareness, that we've decided to try and use a video blog. So welcome to the Breast Cancer Awareness Month 2022 Actual Dance video blog. Over the years, I've been talking about or blogging it every day or several times a week during October to help raise awareness of breast cancer. Why? Well, breast cancer has been a huge factor in my life and in our life. That is the life of my wife, Susan. I'm pointing back because that's her and me in our wedding in 1966. And our story is that in 2000, the year 2000, she was diagnosed with breast cancer. Her diagnosis became grim. And I, her husband, her care partner, but I like to call today her love partner, had to be with her and imagine what it would take for me to hold her as she took her last breath. Spoiler alert, she's just fine. In fact, keep coming back and we're going to have her and me talk about that time. In 2011 or so, actually probably around 2009, 9 years after her diagnosis and 9 years after her recovery or in her recovery, I discovered that I had in me a story, an experience that I had not been able to articulate. And that experience became a play and became a book. More importantly, it became what my life is about. My mission in life today is to take this story of my experience, not because I'm special, but because I have found something that I think will be helpful for people and has proven that over the years. And so my goal is that for everybody who needs to see the play, read the book, hear this story, experience or feel the experience of what it was like to get ready to do what I couldn't imagine I could possibly do. I'll have a chance to experience that. I'll have a chance to see it. Now, it's an unlikely journey for me. Those of you who may know me remember or know that I came from El Paso, Texas. I went to law school, and in 1970, I went to work for Ralph Nader. I was a Nader's Raider. I was a crusader. And that is how I spent a lot of my life in Washington. Susan and I were married in 1966. This was at the beginning of our journey together. We went to law school in Austin, Texas, but I came up to Washington, D.C. in 1970 to be part of a really exciting time in America. We worked on things like auto safety, unsafe at any speed. I worked on property tax reform and how corporations abuse their responsibility to pay for local services in order to bribe local communities to bring their companies to their cities. We have environmental action. And I spent a career doing that sort of thing. I went to work on the Hill for a US Senator. I went to work at the Federal Trade Commission. I even started a public affairs firm for 25 years. And then in 2000, everything changed. We had 2 children by then. We were living a very comfortable life. And the story began with one morning in the spring of 2000, well, actually it wasn't the morning, but one evening in 2000, when I'd come home from work and Susan told me that her internist wanted to have her check something. The internist had felt something funny under Susan's right breast, and Susan was to see a breast surgeon. The rest is what's the actual dance is really about. It's about the ritual of confronting the loss of the person you love most in your life. And how can you find the courage and strength and ultimately the blessing associated with that? The actual dance is also about breast cancer and breast cancer awareness. Our lives, Susan and my lives, have been shaped by that in some odd ways. We were very conscious of breast cancer. Susan's mother had died from advanced breast cancer just a year after we got married. Our first anniversary was saddened because Susan's mother had died 2 weeks earlier from advanced breast cancer. And then 5 years later, my mother died from advanced breast cancer. So when Susan was diagnosed, clearly I came up with one answer in my brain. I knew what was going to happen. I'd never heard of anybody who survived, if you will, breast cancer. I already understood that they would tell you everything would be okay, but it would eventually come back and get you. That, of course, is not true. And of course, there are increasingly positive outcomes from breast cancer. Let me make a note at this moment, though, that breast cancer is still an enormous problem. Just checked it. There will be 264,000 people, almost all women, will be diagnosed with breast cancer in 2022. And of that, let me double check the number. Yes, 42,000 will die. Breast Cancer Awareness Month is around one thing. For women and men, but especially women, do what it takes to be aware and follow and be more cautious, or be prepared. Early diagnosis makes all the difference in the world. So annual mammograms, weekly or daily or monthly checks and feeling for lumps, and genetic testing, know your risk factor. Again, our story was quite different. Susan was checking often. Susan had 3 biopsies for things that felt funny in her breast earlier, and the first 2 were absolutely negative. The third one was unusual. It was at a time where there was nothing known as 0 stage breast cancer. There was clearly something off about her, about what they found in her breast, the testing. So we weren't fans of, oh, that looks funny, let's remove the breast. It was, all right, stop, let us go take the tissue for a second opinion. And so we got a second opinion on the tissue, and we even had our local hospital send it to the Mayo Clinic. We should have, in retrospect, been aware that something was off, because Mayo Clinic said they didn't see any breast cancer, but it was interesting. Keep them informed. It wasn't clear. It wasn't everything's fine. It was, well, we don't see breast cancer, but boy, that's an interesting specimen. Now, maybe if we had seen it then, things would have been different. Maybe the actual dance would never been danced, and I would not have lived this life I'm living now. And it was about 5 years after that, that morning I showed that, why do I say morning? That evening, Susan said, I need to go get this thing. Felt funny to me. So what is the actual dance? The journey, once this happens, everything changes. And our own specific journey, our own specific travel through the stages of analysis, care, and follow-up, and then prognosis is unique to us, as everyone's journey is unique to them. But it had an array of effects. Breast cancer affects the family. It affects everybody. At the time, I was running a public affairs firm in Washington, D.C. I had 50 employees, and I had to go around and tell them that my wife was not doing well, and I would be out a lot because I decided that I would be with her at every appointment and every treatment. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that. Not everybody gets to do that. And again, one of the issues that are still around is when this strikes a family and you have one wage earner, or you don't have enough money for somebody to take off, or the firm doesn't have sick family leave, how do you do that? I was lucky enough to be able to do that. What was thought to be just plain old scar tissue. You will read and you will see in the play, Susan had her biopsy. Doctor came out and said, good news, plain old scar tissue. I'm sure of it, but it wasn't. They went back, they looked at it under a microscope, they had chemical and dye reports, and it was stage 3. There was no tumor, there was just a piece of breast tissue that was all breast cancer. But there was also good news. He said, great news, though, it's not in your lymph nodes. Now, this would be a great news, right? And then we got yet another report back and said, oops, that's a mistake. It is in her lymph nodes. And then there came a moment when, during her first oncology visit, the doctor found a post-double mastectomy lump in her breast. Now, I'm not going to tell you the rest of it because you can get the book and you can read the story. That moment, of course, changed everything. That told me what I suspected, what I always knew, that there's no good outcome to breast cancer. That I was right. The actual dance is a metaphor for something that was real for me. And I understand, too, I've come to know that there is a form of this ritual, this coming to terms with an existential loss in your life for everyone. This is just my example. And someone once asked me, how did I think up this idea of a ballroom dance as the end of life moment? And you have to understand, it's not just a ballroom dance. The actual dance is a ritual that happens in a ballroom in a different dimension of time and space. I would be driving my car and be in 2 places at the same time. I would not see the road ahead. I would be driving instead. I would for, I think it's a nanosecond in Earth time. It's a lifetime in that other dimension. I would be with Susan in this place, this ballroom that existed in this different place of time and space. We'd be surrounded by everyone we ever met, ever knew, ever loved, even generations from before us. They would be there in that moment. We are watched by the universe, including, I think, will be even generations yet to come. And we will dance to the song that Susan and I love. We will dance until she slowly disappears from my arms. That is what the actual dance. That happened in my head. It was real. But I didn't quite understand it. I think as everyone who may have had to deal with this knows, as her partner, as her supporter, I could not reveal to Susan that I felt this way. Susan, her attitude was, no way, I'm going to survive this. I don't care what the odds are. And I couldn't let her know. I couldn't even let her sniff that I had this other thing going on. And if you think about it, how do you do that? How do you push this core belief that this is going to happen so deep inside that when you're with your wife or when you're with a person, they can't smell that? Somebody who knows you better than they know anyone else knows you. And somehow I did that. But I think that also meant it got pushed so deep inside of me that I didn't even realize it was there. Not until I started doing some theatrical work, until I started doing improv. Theatrical improv is all about letting go, letting things out of that deep inside of you come up. So that is what the actual dance is about, the story, the journey. It does have a happy ending. On the very personal level, I had always imagined I would continue to be an advocate, a lawyer for the people, helping put together win-win situations between various competing parties for the consumer and public interest. I had eventually sold my company. I was a social justice consultant to the Collegiate Church in New York, which enabled me to do some theater work up there. And then this show found me. And as I started doing it, and the rest is history. We'll talk more about that. And we'll talk a lot more about this month, the journey of breast cancer and what it means, how it affects us, where the science is this year, what sort of resources are out there, and hoping too to have some interviews. You will meet Susan, hopefully soon, maybe this week, and we'll talk together. But a lot of the other people who were involved in our lives and went through this process with us. And so I hope you will continue to watch this, and we'd love to have your story. What I am most moved by when I do a performance is when we, Susan and I, always sit down afterwards and talk to people who are in the audience. And we always learn something from that. I've learned and reinterpreted my own journey because of things people have told me about their journey and related to me. Oh, that's what that was about. Oh, now I see. So some of that will come. So please, theactualdance.com or sam@theactualdance.com. Leave comments, send me an email. If you've got a story to tell, maybe we can find a way to do an interview and include you in one of these video blogs. So again, thank you for listening. Sorry about having to redo this one, but I hope you come back. And let me end up with one thing about this. There is an anthem that I've discovered for the actual dance. It's led me to be writing poetry and discovering. What I discovered was the actual dance is about what love and life really mean. And it helped me understand how Susan and I were related to each other. The idea, and I believe that there's a spiritual element to every life. And that spiritual element, what love means is when your spirit and your essence becomes integrated, entwined with another being. And they're infinite. It isn't just one being necessarily, but Susan and I are a single spiritual entity. And in the play, you'll see that idea expressed in the moment as I came to understand that Susan and I am the other half of Susan, a single entity. And so I wrote a poem called Us. And I believe that this is the anthem of the show, and I believe it is the truth of our experience. So I will close with this. Oh, by the way, if you go to the actual dance and click on music, I commissioned original music for this poem. So you can listen to it with music on the website. And the poem is called Us. Life exists in each of us as a form of the divine, a tangible essence of who we are. Love. The love is when our essence becomes entwined, each an equal half of the other. I love you. Simply awakens the us in you and me. I love you. Thank you, and please check back. Sign up on our website for our email list. We'll send out notices, or just come back and check for our next audio blog. We'll also have it posted on our YouTube channel, The Actual Dance.